Hey, Sean, I wanted to talk about pricing and how to price a project. I'm going to be talking mostly about video production, but this applies to any creative field, graphic design, Photoshop, VFX, anything that you're doing in the creative field that you're going to bid out to potential clients. This is what you need to do to create a sustainable business. And I'm going to talk quickly about two things. One, how to actually price a project, and I'm going to use video production as my example. But two, and more importantly, the headspace you need to be in to be a successful small business owner. And it's really difficult for us sometimes because a lot of us don't have a CEO or a salesperson. A lot of us are doing this because we're creatives. We're people who have been doing this for fun for a long time, and now here's a chance to do this as a career. And we don't always come equipped with the skills to negotiate against these people who are trying to get, the most out of us for the least amount of money. And we just don't have the same practice at those negotiations that these people have because we focused on our skills for a long time. So the two things that you need to put in your head to be able to negotiate properly and create a sustainable business for yourself is, one, be ready to say no. It sounds weird, and beyond just being ready to say no to a project, put yourself in the headspace. If you can commit to when that phone rings or when you know you've scheduled the phone call, be of the mindset of, I don't want this project. I don't need this project. I could do this project. I could execute it perfectly, but I don't want to. And it sounds weird and pessimistic, but what happens is you will negotiate a little differently. You will stand up for what you need because you know that you won't do it unless it's financially viable for you as a project and for your company and your family and anything else. And they'll pick up on that in phone calls and stuff. And the paradigm will shift a little bit where people will start to try to sell you on the project and they won't be pushing back on price so much. And they'll notice that if they push back a little bit and you say, well, this may not be a good project for me, that they'll stumble and they'll say, well, hang on, let's keep talking. Let's see if there's a way to make this work. So be ready to say no and really commit to that in your heart because that's going to make a huge difference with how you're able to run your business. And number two, on the note of being a creative, you have to understand that in most cases, you're not going to be a commodity. You're an artist, you're a creative professional, and people will find you because they like your work, especially when it comes to designers. People aren't looking for the cheapest design. Yes, they want to save money, but the difference between the assets that you'll create or as a video producer that you'll produce for $5,000, that's going to be inherently different than what someone else might produce for $5,000. And so people like the way that you think about a project. They like the B-roll that you've shot. They like the narratives that you weave into a story. They like the questions you ask in an interview. There's all these elements that make you unique. And so you have to remember that if someone's coming to you, they may have gotten referred to you by someone else who's used you. They may have seen your work and they want something like what you've done for themselves. And so coming in and competing on price cheapens what you do to saying, well, if somebody else will do it for $800, I'll do it for $800. And you don't even know what they're talking about. You need to say, what I need to do to create this to the caliber that I'm proud of and that I'm proud to deliver to you is what you want. People want you to be proud of the work that you're going to do for them. And so you need to understand that you're not going to compete on price. And if you have a conversation with a client and you ask them right up front, like, are you going to go with the cheapest bid? I love that question because it makes people understand right away, if the answer is yes, then I want to know that because I'm going to walk away because you will always find someone cheaper. In the creative industry, our nephews are kryptonite of there's always somebody's nephew who's going to come in and do it way cheaper than we ever could. And there's just no way to compete with that. You're always going to find somebody who can do it on Fiverr. If you put yourself in the space to say, I'm going to compete with that for that lowest cost, you're going to end up with ungrateful clients and projects that you have to rush and that you will never be proud of and that will never get you more work. So put yourself in the mindset of understanding who you are, what your value is, and be ready to say no to projects that don't understand that same value. So the first thing I do when I have a conversation with a potential client, and the first thing that you should do is ask what their budget is. Because you will save yourself a lot of time and headaches from going through conversations and sending bids back and forth and all this stuff, and only to find out after a week and several hours of your work, people saying like, oh, we only have $300. We thought this would cost $300. That happens. That happens a lot. Ask anyone who's been doing this for a while. People come in with wildly misguided expectations, and then you sort of feel bad when you say like, oh, a project like this, we could probably do it for $8,000. And they come back and be like, whoa, we were thinking like 500. It's like, well, you can't now as a producer say like, well, I can do it for 500. But if you can get that out of the way at first, and if they say when you ask their budget, oh, it's $500, cool, then you can say, hey, this isn't good for me. I know some students who might be, I know some grade school students who might be willing to try it for that. You can push them that way. And the other answer you may get is someone saying like, oh, we don't have a budget yet. And I love that, because I always shoot back like, okay, well, if we came back with $50,000, does that work? And that's when people are usually like, oh, okay, no, we were thinking more like $2,500. Like, okay, so you did sort of have a budget in mind. We just needed to find out what it was. So if you can, find out what the budget is. And if they won't tell you, then I promise you're going to have some headaches down the road. So approach with caution if you're going to go down that road. But if you're ready to say no, you're fine. Say, we're not comfortable. We don't know what our budget is. Like, okay, well, I may have someone else you can talk to. I don't move forward with a project unless I know what the budget is that I'm working in. The next questions I ask, I try to be exhaustive about imagining what this project could be. I want to know how many days they expect it to take to be filmed. And if that's different, then how many days I think it might take to be filmed based on how they describe their project. I want to know what level of polish they're expecting if they want to rent a venue. I want to know when they're going to need it by. I want to know where it's going to be published, because if it's going to go on YouTube on their website, that's one thing. If it's going to be shown at a trade show on, a live PA, that's another thing. And we're going to film those differently, and we may use different microphones or different cameras depending on where this thing ends up. And so asking all these questions to get as much information as possible is really, really important. And then I never give a price during that first phone call, because it's not fair. I want to take some time and come up with some options and present those to them, and they can make a decision based off that. So I never have the conversation where someone says like, oh, hey, how much would it cost to do a 2-minute video? Like, I don't know. Is it a 2-minute take where we stand there in 2 minutes and we're done after 10 minutes? Or is it a 2-minute video with 500 shots that are each, 1 second long? Wildly different. Get as much information as you can and then come back with a bid. So when it's time to actually create your bid, make a spreadsheet that you put all your costs in and come back to it. I make a spreadsheet for every single project that I do a bid for. I do 3 options and I imagine it in 3 different ways. And I've made a video talking all about just how I do that. And I'm not going to go into the details of that, but suffice it to say that I have a standardized spreadsheet that says, if I need 2 camera people, I type a 2 in, and then it tells me how much that's going to cost based on how much I pay my contractors. And if I know that I'm going to need food, if I need pre-production, if I'm going to need a storyboard artist, if I'm going to need a colorist, if I'm going to need music. At a point when you do a big production and you're working in giant round numbers, like we can do this project for $25,000, in there you're going to build in some wiggle room that you can pull from and maybe forget some things. And you probably have a big chunk in there for saying, hey, if things go wrong, we'll have money to take care of that. We'll have money to fix that. But it's so important when you're running a small production to keep these little costs in mind. And when I was first getting started, one of the ways that I got burned all the time was music, where I wouldn't include music costs in my bid. And then I'd end up paying, $20, $50, $100 to license a song, not including the time it took me to search for it, to send them 10 songs and them to say, oh, I hate all those. If you have anything like that, if you have a Soundstripe subscription or something like that costs you $100 a year, put that in there. Make your clients pay for that, because if you just eat those costs, you're never going to make them back up. So put that into your budgets and then create options. And again, I've made videos all about the 3 options and the mindset to be in as you build these out. But really be true to yourself. And if you find yourself saying, I don't want to charge this much, then you need to look at what goes into it. And you say, yeah, I want 3 people to film this, and we need a gaffer and we need a sound person, but I really want to come back to these people with $6,000. It's like, well, who's eating that overage? You're not going to ask your contractors to do it for, half price because you didn't feel like asking your client for the money. So really build it and be honest with yourself about what it'll cost, and make 3 options. One sort of down the middle, what could get it done. Make a cheaper option of like, if we really had to, we could make it happen for this. And then make an expensive option of, if we could do anything, if I could produce the project of my dreams for you, it would take all this, but it would be amazing. And then present all three of them and say, explain exactly what they are. Say, this one, it's gonna be shaky. We're not gonna have the time to color it. It's gonna be shot by only 2 people. We're probably gonna miss some things. Editing's gonna take more because we don't have as much coverage. And then say, this one's way more expensive, but it'll look like this, it'll sound like this, it'll do this for you if we create it this way. So create those options and present them with honesty to your client, and then get ready. Because the final step after you present it is that final negotiation. And this is so often where I struggle with people because, one, I don't like to give all the details of my pricing. It's very straightforward, it's very honest, but I have found it's sort of a red flag. If people want to see a whole breakdown of my prices, I know that there's about to be nickel and diming, and that's when I can tell that they don't value the work that we're doing. My favorite clients are the ones that trust me to do it well, and that look at the cost and say, that's probably what it costs. And they know that I'm not taking advantage of anyone. They know that I have this system that I put things through. People get paid what is fair. The end, we move on. And so when you present something to somebody and they say like, oh, do we really need, 2 camera operators? It's like, okay, no, that'll knock this off, but this is how that's going to affect the final project. But the worst is, and you need to be ready for this, and again, this is when you come back to just saying no. It's when they say, this looks good. If we could shave off like 10%, if we can, do this for $1,000 cheaper, let's do, option 2. And the problem with that is that it's on you to eat that compromise without getting anything in return. And so you need to have the open conversation. If you want to keep the client, if you don't just want to say no and walk away, if you're close, if you like the people, whatever the situation is, you need to say, okay, we can take $1,000 off. I want you to help me figure out where we're going to take that. Do you want to not do coloring? Do you want to not have, good lights that we rent? Do you want to not have a camera operator? Tell me what we should remove from this to make it work for that. Because this isn't just some nebulous, we're sort of pitching on the value of what this could cost you. We're doing this in a fair way because that's what makes me feel good at the end of the day, and that's what I can be proud of, and that's what I can continue to do, knowing that from client to client, I'm being consistent and I'm being a good business person. And that's why I continue to get referred from person to person, from company to company. So those are my tips. You need to put yourself in that space where you're okay walking away. You need to build a budget that's comprehensive but transparent, and then you need to present it to people in a way that you can be proud of, and that whole time look for reasons to walk away, because if you don't find them, they will find you later, and you won't be happy because you will be the one that has to actually go back through and cover all these overages and cover the unhappy clients. So look for reasons to walk away, and you'll be glad you did in the long run. And as you raise your prices and do better and better projects, people are going to understand that you work at a certain level, and you're not going to have that reputation for being the person who says yes to every gig for less than $1,000 and who is going to spend the next several years just scraping by, having the reputation for the person who does it for real cheap. Build your reputation as somebody who does good work, that's quality, that's in line with industry standard pricing, and that ultimately makes the client happy. That's all I got. Thanks for watching. See you later. Bye.